Hi, this is Lou, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be showing you how to paint a Celtic knot pattern in watercolour. So I've got some watercolour paper here. I happen to be using Arches, but you can use anything you have on hand. I've got my watercolour paints. I've just picked some random colours. In fact, these are the same colours that I used in my last video. The last recorded video where I did a geometric pattern, and I think these two will work together kind of side by side. They're going to be very similar in terms of the design. So I'm using Indigo, Perylene Green, Quinacridone Gold and Permanent Alizarin Crimson. I've also got my palette of gold and metallic paints here. This is by Gerstaeker, and I'm going to be using the blue gold from that palette. I've got a couple of brushes. I've got a round size 8 brush, and then I've got a really small brush. So yeah, the smallest one that you've got really. I've got my water and a paper towel, and then I'm going to be drawing out my Celtic knot design. So I've got a pencil. I like a mechanical pencil. I've got a ruler, and then this is my kneadable eraser, and it looks a bit rubbish but it works really well. So the first thing to do on your paper is to draw a grid. So I'm using a grid of squares, and I want to fit it nicely on my paper. So I know that I want 3 across and 3 squares across and 4 squares down. So looking at my paper, it's 18 centimetres across. So if I make it 15, that gives me a nice like border around. So if I come in 1.5 centimetres on either side, then that's the outside. Let's draw those lines in. And I'm drawing this a little bit a little bit more weighty than I normally would, because I want you to be able to see the lines. So normally I'd make these lines really light so you couldn't see them very well. But I do want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So the distance between those 2 lines now should be 15 centimetres. So I can put in another line at 5 and another line at 10. So let's do that at the bottom as well. 5 and 10, and I'm going to mark those lines in too. And then I need 20 centimetres. The paper is 26 centimetres, so I need to mark in 3 centimetres at the top and the bottom. Now I can make my marks at 5, 10 and 15 centimetres, and the same on the other side. You don't have to do this in centimetres, you can use whatever measurements work for you. This is just the shape that happens to fit nicely on the page. Also, you can work with different numbers of squares. You don't have to do 3 by 4. It works perfectly well if you use different numbers. So there's my grid. And now what I want to do is I want to mark the centre of each grid. So I'm going to just put a little line roughly in the centre going that way, and then I can just make the same mark going in the other direction too. So just fill all of my squares with little crosses. So now I want to make little like square shapes. They're more diamond shapes really, and I want them to be like where the lines cross in the middle. So I'm just sketching this by hand, and you can make this whatever size you want, but you want to kind of keep them consistent across the page. I'm going to do those ones. So I've done them for the 6 in the middle, and then I want to do them around the edge, but only don't do the corners. You don't need to do the corners for this pattern. I'm just going to mark like a half diamond at the edge and down the side, there and there. And then I want to do the same for the little centres. So I'm going to draw a little diamond around each of those as well. Now I'm actually nearly there with the design. All I need to do now is to start joining up the edges of some of these little diamonds that I made. And I'm going to make a pair of parallel lines joining this square to this square and this square to this square. And then I do the same from here, this square to this square and this square to this square. And then I need to make my parallel lines go this way for the next row. So I'm just going to keep working down the rows. So the next row, the line goes this way, joins this square to this square and this one to that one. The next one goes here, and then the next one is here. So now I've got the folds of the Celtic knot kind of starting to appear. So now I need to repeat the lines going this way for the next row down. So they go this way. And then again this way. And then again this way. And each time you're creating like this basket weave pattern. And move that up a bit. So now you've created this woven pattern and it's looking pretty good. The only thing now is that I want to just round off some of the corners. So I'm just going to take my pencil and just take off some of the harsh corners like that, and then here. So I'm just taking the edge off that corner and then I'm allowing it to come down to a nice point right in the corners of the page. The other thing I want to do is I want to kind of, I'm going to turn the page there because I want to kind of curve this one a little bit as well, just to make it feel a little more organic. And actually I think it could come out a bit further. Let's see. There. And then I'm going to curve this line here as well. I'm also going to curve there and this one in the corner here too. So I'm going to do the same thing here and just take that line out a little way, not too far, and then curve the inner line. So the squares on the inside of the pattern are just left as squares, but these ones on the outside of the pattern I've just curved a little bit, just to give it a little bit more character. Now what I want to do is I want to go over and take out any of the lines that are going to be crossing where my watercolour wants to go. So on here and along here. Just take off some of these corners. So I'm going to keep going with that and just removing those extra lines that I don't want to show underneath the watercolour, and then I will come back when I'm ready to put some colour on. So I've rubbed away all of the grid lines that I put in place to mark the pattern out, and I've left the pencil lines that I actually want to see, and I've left some of the ones around the outside as well, and I can remove them once I've completely finished with the watercolour. So I've got some indigo, and I'm just going to start in the top left corner, and I'm going to use the point of my brush to get right into the corner there. And I'm going to paint this whole section, following my pencil lines pretty closely and using the point and the side of the brush to get into any difficult areas. I want to be changing my colour as I go, so there's different ways you can do that. You can dip into areas of colour, or you can add a little bit more water to make the colour a little paler. I'm going to make it a little paler along here. So I've got exactly the same colour in my brush. I just added a little bit more water in. And now I'm going to switch it to green. So I'm just going to just paint that colour in next to it. And I'm going to bring it down to here. So I've got pencil lines defining all of my sections now. And all I'm doing is painting quite carefully within my pencil lines. It's really just colouring in. I'm going to help that blend a little bit more just by dabbing some of that green in there. So I want to continue my painting as if I'm following the thread of the Celtic knot. So this strand here is going underneath that one, and it's popping up here. So I'm going to go in with the green here. And just paint a little of that, and then I can switch it to another colour. So I'm going to start transitioning that to some of the yellow. So I'm just dipping my brush into the yellow, and I'm going to blend that all the way back. And this little section just gets up to there and stops, because now it would be going under the next kind of strand. So to follow that round, let's do this bit here. And I'm going to start with that same colour, which is basically the yellow mixed in the green that was already on my brush. And let's see how far I can spread it. All right, maybe up to there. And then let's add a little bit more yellow into that colour and start transitioning it properly to a nice warm yellow. So now following around here, the next bit is this bit here. So I'm going to start again with that warm yellow. This Quinacridone gold is a fun colour because when it's kind of quite thick, it looks almost orange. And then when you add more water to it, it becomes more like lemony yellow. So it's really clever. You can get like different effects with it depending on how much of the pigment there is. You see down here it's really quite kind of almost like a burnt orange. But then if I add a little bit more water, start to spread it out, you can see it becomes a lot more like a yellowy yellow. And I'm going to transition that into the pink. So to add some of that in there. When I say pink, I mean, of course, the crimson. Now I'm going to be doing this bit here, and I need to be careful not to put my hand down in the bit I've just painted. It might be easier to turn the page and work around this way. So now I need to paint this bit in here, but that's going to be touching these two areas. So I'm just going to check that they're dry before I start painting them. Yeah, and it is dry. So if you're a really fast painter, you might find that these areas are still a little bit wet, in which case it's good to wait for them to dry so you don't get bleeds in between those areas. I'm just going to keep going, keep painting, and I'm just going to kind of keep following this kind of colour progression all the way around, wherever it takes me. And I think, let's just check. Yeah, I should be able to get this to join up at the end. So the watercolour stage is all done now. I did manage to get a bit of a bleed there because I touched two areas that were still wet, but it's okay. It's going to look quite interesting on the final thing, I think. So I'm going to let this dry completely, and then I can go in and remove my remaining pencil marks. And then it's time to put the gold on. So now all the pencil lines are gone and my watercolour is completely dry, I'm going to add the gold. So here's my gold palette, and I'm just going to add some water into this pan and let it kind of sit there for a while, and it slowly starts to become a little bit more creamy and rich. You want to use a nice fine brush for this, so it's easier to do the straight lines. So we can start with the straight lines and then come back and do the curved ones later. And I can see that my first line isn't particularly strong. So I'll go back and add a little bit more gold into it. And then I'll do this one. And then I can move on to this one here and pull the gold towards me. And again, the line's not very strong, so I can drop in some extra colour. Of course, adding the gold is a little bit extra. There's absolutely nothing wrong with leaving it as it is. It looked pretty good before I started doing this. I think that's all the straight bits, so now I'm going to have to do some curved bits. So I don't think it really matters where you start. But I do find it easier drawing the brush towards me. So here is my completed Celtic knot design. I really hope that you've enjoyed this, and if you do give it a go, I'd love to see your interpretation of it. You can post it on Instagram and tag me at Lou Rachel Davis, and I do love seeing the work that you make. A couple of things that I want to mention that if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you might be interested in. The first is that I've done a couple of live streams recently, and I'm hoping to make that a regular thing. So I'm going to set one up on Saturday. So if you want to paint along with me, there's a reference image. It'll be a line and wash on my website. And if you want to download that beforehand, you can do if you want to paint along, but it will be up on the screen as well while I'm live streaming. The other is that a few people have asked if they can support me, which is wonderful and really appreciated. And to make that possible, I've set up a Ko-fi account. I did have Patreon for a while, but it didn't really work for me very well. So I thought I'd give this a go instead. I do make a little bit of money from the adverts that you get at the beginning and end of these videos, but the more I can make from making them, the more time I can put into them, I can make them more consistent and better quality. So it all goes towards that. So if that's something that you want to do, then there'll be a link for that down below. So thanks very much for watching today. I really look forward to seeing you again in another video, hopefully on Saturday in the live stream. So yeah, the last ones were really fun. I'm really looking forward to that on Saturday, so hopefully see you there. If not, I will see you in another pre-recorded video very soon. Bye bye.